Hi, it's Rick Partlow again for How to Write Science Fiction That Doesn't Suck. Last time we went into character building and characters and relationships, and I left off a couple little details I thought I'd just fill in for you right here when I was talking about military biographies and those sorts of books that you might want to check out. I did not give you enough titles, I think, so I wanted to let you know of a few biographies and just war stories. They're not necessarily biographies, but the story of one person during the war that you might want to take a look at. There is a couple that everybody will have heard of, but they are very useful. American Sniper. You may have seen the movie. Well, the book is a good resource. It gets inside the head of I say the main character. It's not the main character. The subject of the biography, Lone Survivor, Marine Sniper about Carlos Hathcock in Vietnam. No Easy Day. It's a story about a Navy SEAL told from his point of view. I'm not sure if he writes it or it was written with a co-writer or a ghostwriter, but it's called No Easy Day. Getting back in time a little more, With the Old Breed at Peleliu in Okinawa by E.B. Sledge. And also Helmet for My Pillow, From Paris Island to the Pacific by Robert Leckie. Those are two of the books that the HBO miniseries The Pacific drew on for their stories they told in that miniseries. Also, Guadalcanal Diary by Richard Chagaskis. And finally, there is a book. Oh, now the name is escaping me. Let me look it up. It's called One Bullet Away. It's by Nathaniel Fick. And he was the platoon leader in the HBO miniseries Generation Kill during the Iraq War for his Marine Force Recon platoon. So if you haven't watched Generation Kill, that's a great resource, as well as Band of Brothers and the Pacific. And Band of Brothers, the book, is also a very good resource for getting inside the head of line soldiers. Okay, now that that's done, we're going to get to our main topic for today, which is world building. And world building is a big topic, so we're going to split it up somewhat. And today I'm going to hit something that it's like one of those things that science fiction writers do first. And sometimes they should, and sometimes it's just putting off actually writing, but coming up with a method of faster than light travel. Now, as of right now, the science of this is that theoretically faster than light travel is possible using a couple different methods that sort of get around the whole relativity thing, but it's possible, but only using materials that we haven't discovered how to build yet and which may not exist. What they call I think called imaginary elements or something like that, but they're exotic materials that we don't know how to build, and the ones that we think we might know how to build require so much energy that it's going to require a change in what we know about physics in order to build most of these. So realism doesn't have to be a big part of this. If you want to use a faster than light drive that's been theorized on, or hypothesized on by physicists, then that's fine. It'll give you a little verisimilitude. It'll give you a little bit of street cred with the hard science types. But it's quite all right just to invent one that you want to use, because it has just as much of a chance of being real. The key to what you do with a faster than light drive is to have rules. You may not ever have to explain those to the readers, but have rules and be consistent with them. If you have a hyperdrive and you can jump from anywhere, like even inside an atmosphere, like Battlestar Galactica. Well, then, you're robbing some of the tension because you can jump from anywhere, and all your readers are going to know after a while, oh, they're in trouble, but they can just jump to hyperspace and they'll be fine. And you'll have to make complications like, oh, we can't leave them, we can't jump because we can't leave them, or the hyperdrive's damaged, like Star Wars did over and over. The best thing to do is to make limitations. Can't jump in a gravity well is a very, very familiar trope. Can't jump next to a star. You can't jump without precise coordinates. Just some limitations. Something that's going to keep your hyperdrive from being just an all-purpose getaway vehicle. If you do want to go with types of faster-than-light drives that have been hypothesized upon by real physicists, then a popular one is the Alcubierre space-time inflation drive. And the idea behind this is that you use exotic matter to recreate the sort of physical conditions that were around at the beginning, at the inflation of the universe right after the Big Bang. And you use this exotic matter to inflate the space-time behind your starship, which will shrink the space-time in front of it. It's kind of like a big cosmic boat propeller. Now, we have no idea how to get this exotic matter. We have no idea if this will work. Some people have theorized that once you inflate the space-time, that you can't uninflate it, and it could cause lots of problems. All this is just guesswork. We have no idea if this exists at all or if it ever will. But if you want to use that name and that concept, I've done it. So don't feel you have to stick by the science, because the whole idea behind this is to give yourself a way to get to where the cool things happen. You want to give your characters a star drive that will get them someplace where they can have conflict and have drama and have the rest of the story. So above all else, whatever star drive you pick, it should have that. It should have the ability to advance the story. And that's something that a lot of writers forget. I mean, they want to be, I want to do a realistic one. Well, you want to do something that's going to advance your story. Some of the best written science fiction ever just had hand-waved star drives. On the other hand, some of it had well-researched star drives, like the Alderson drive and Jerry Pournelle and Larry Niven's Codominium series. The Alderson drive was named after, I believe his name was Kip Alderson, a physicist at Caltech, who they talked to and asked him to design a faster-than-light drive that made sense, and he did. Another quasi-realistic method of interstellar travel would be wormholes. And it is theoretically possible to inflate, if they exist at all, to inflate the microscopic wormholes left over from the Big Bang and line the inside of their surface with exotic matter, again, which we don't know if it exists or how to make it, and widen them and keep them open. Now, whichever method you use to get around the speed of light limit, you're going to wind up with different limitations and different story effects, especially in military science fiction. If you have a hyperdrive, for example, which includes, a bunch of different variations on that. I call mine the transition drive in my Birthright universe books, which include Glory Boy, Birthright, Recon, Acheron, Psy-War, Drop Trooper, the upcoming Holy War series. The transition drive allows people to create small temporary wormholes into what I call transition space, which is a space outside of ours, which is connected to through what these gravito-inertial lines of force between gravitational masses. So anytime there's a star, it creates like a gravitational highway to another star. This is all just made up, pulled out of my butt, but it allows me to have limitations, to have plot points. So if you have a system that allows you to jump from anywhere to anywhere, then that affects your characters and your plot, because if they can jump out of the system and get away from the bad guys, that affects how wars are going to be fought. That affects how chase scenes in your book are going to go, because if they can't chase them past the point where they can jump into another star system, then you have a getaway. You have a point where your characters have to get away from the people chasing them. You have a point where the people they're chasing can get away if they want to. So it very much affects your plot. If you have a warp drive style system like Star Trek, or like the Alcubierre space-time inflation drive, they're not jumping into another space. They're just going effectively faster than light, although they're cheating by stretching space to do it. But at any rate, they can't just jump out and get away and nobody knows where they're going. People can follow them, in other words. If they have a wormhole system, if you have a wormhole system where you have fixed points in space where you have to go through, wars are going to be fought totally different. If you can surround the place where the wormhole comes out with mines and defensive ships and orbital platforms, then it's going to be really, really hard to bust through that. And you're going to have to come through with overwhelming force. And you're going to have to get from that point in space to the planet you want to go to, or wherever you're going to the next warp point. And you're going to have to wade through all those defenses to get there. And you're going to take that account in your battle. You're not going to have some spy ship jump through the wormhole undetected and drop somebody on a planet, because they're going to see you. They're going to notice something coming through. If you have that warp drive style ship, you're not going to be able to jump into a system and surprise them. I mean, you can come in a way where they won't be prepared. Like you can come in on another side of the system. You can come in off the ecliptic, which means ecliptic is the line that the planets revolve around their sun. Like if you look at a model of the solar system, all the planets are on like one plane going around the sun. They don't go like this around the sun. They go like this around the sun. So if you come into the system, if you're using that warp drive and you come into the system like from the polar north of their star and come down that way, well, they might not be expecting you to go that way. I don't know. I'm not sure. It made up physics. I don't know what the limitations would be. Maybe you have to come in on the ecliptic. Maybe there's some gravitational reason why. I don't know. You can make that up yourself. But bear in mind, if you have a warp style drive, you probably cannot sneak up on somebody. It's probably going to use a lot of power. It's probably going to have a fairly high signature. So if part of your plot requires someone to sneak up on someone else, you better have a faster than light drive that lets you drop into a system wherever you want. Okay, a good source for reading up on possible, theorized faster than light drives, by the way, is Atomic Rockets, which is a great website. I think it's what the web address is, projectrho.com. So projectrho.com, RHO, like the Greek letter rho, and you can get lost on that page for hours. Ask me how I know. It talks about the total package of science fiction, every single technological aspect you can think of, from sublight and faster than light spaceships, weapons, defense shields, everything. It's a great resource. Now, another thing to take into account when you are coming up with your faster than light drive is how big you want the ships to be. Because if you're building a ship that uses some kind of a warp drive, as we were talking about, it's probably going to have to be really big. And as a side note, it might have to be streamlined, because unless you can come up with a good energy, or you have to think about having some kind of an energy field to deflect particles coming at you effectively faster than light, which could destroy you very easily, even a tiny one. So you'd have to have some sort of energy shield, or you have to have the ship be streamlined like an atmospheric jet, or you could hand wave that the warp field itself, keeps everything away from the ship. That's what I did, just to make it easier. The warp field. I like to have like one unbelievable hand wave bit of tech, or as few as possible in what I write. Sometimes I have to do more than that, but like for instance in Duty on Our Planet, the one hand wave bit of tech that I started with was they had this warp field, and it's pretty much all purpose because it lets them go faster than light. It acts as a defensive shield because it warps all matter away from them, matter and energy away from them. It warps space-time away from them. So you shoot at them and you cannot hit them because anything you shoot gets warped away from the ship. Which also means, however, that you can't talk to each other. And I had to come up with a way where they used the same energy field that warp space. They sent a modulated version of that out as a communications device. And eventually they used it as a weapon against other ships with the same type of drive. So you have to keep the little things in mind. Everything has to make sense. Everything has to be consistent. Consistency is the most important part of all your technology. If you have defense shields that work on, like say, electromagnetic spectrum, you have like some sort of really high power electromagnetic field that you use for defending your starship, that's not going to do anything. It's a laser. A laser is going to cut right through that. So you're going to have to come up with some other defense for a laser, or else everybody's going to have lasers as their main weapon. Defense shields are another tricky subject, which I won't get into this time. We'll do that on another show about weapons. But your defense shields are going to have something to do with your faster than light drive, because, as I said, if you're going faster than light effectively through space, the defense shields are going to be important. Okay, getting back to the size of the ship. If you have wormhole jump gates and they're far away from the planet you want to get to, or the next gate to the next place you want to go, you're going to have bigger ships because you're going to carry more. Well, if your ship uses reaction mass, maybe it doesn't. Maybe you want some magic drive that doesn't use reaction mass, some sort of reactionless drive, what they used to call a Dean drive. Then you could get away with still having smaller ships. But usually if you're having a universe that uses some sort of wormholes to jump through, fixed points in space to jump through, and then you have to go from there to a planet, you're going to have bigger ships. You're going to have more reaction mass. You're going to have shields. You're going to have radiation shielding. You might want to have, unless you're going one gravity the whole way, which probably could get away with if it's not too far and you can get refueled. But unless you're doing that, you're going to want to have some kind of a rotational drum on your ship so people can exercise or sleep or have medical care with gravity, simulated gravity, because having, and it's not just the realistic part of thinking of the health of the people involved, but stories that are all told in zero gravity, it's hard to remember, and it takes away a lot of dramatic things you can do when you have gravity. I really don't like artificial gravity on ships. I made a concession in my Birthright universe, and I let them use artificial gravity when they are in transition space, the hyperspace. And it works there because the laws of physics are different. They don't know why it works. They can't duplicate it anywhere else. But since they spend, 2 or 3 weeks at a time in transition space, I was like, it would be cool if I could do like the dramatic parts of this, where people are having to talk to each other and have personal moments in gravity. So I kind of bent the rules, but I didn't want to have artificial gravity because if you can control gravity, it just opens up a whole Pandora's box of things that you can do that are almost godlike, and they take away from the limitations that I like to see in a book. A lot of people don't think about this. They'll just say, oh, they turned on the ship's gravity. You can control gravity. You can move planets. You can colonize Jupiter. You could do whatever. Once you control gravity, you're basically controlling the universe. You can do anything. You're godlike. And I don't like godlike power because it takes away some of the stakes. It takes away the tension. I want people to be working with more limited technology. So I don't like to go too far into the future unless there's been some kind of a collapse and things have to be rebuilt. I like to stay within a few hundred years because I don't want the technology to be godlike. I want it to be more of a frontier feel to it, where we've got the technology to get us out where the danger happens, but not enough to make everything not dangerous anymore. Because it's not fun to write about things where there's no danger, no risk. So back to the size of the ships again. You have a wormhole jump gate. You'll want to have a big ship. It has to be well shielded, carry a lot of fuel, carry a lot of reaction mass, food. Again, big ships. If you want small ships, if you want personal starships, they're small enough for like 3 people, maybe small enough to land in an atmosphere on a planet, you're going to have to go with some kind of a hyperspace style drive. Whatever you want to call it, whether it's a tachyon drive, which was a big thing back in the 80s when we first started scientifically speculating about the existence of tachyons, which are hypothetical particles which only go faster than light. They can't go below the speed of light, and the slowest they can go is just over the speed of light. And you get them to slow down by adding energy to them. So the less energy they have, the faster they go. And this was a big thing back in the 80s. If you read a lot of science fiction short stories, tachyons were a big thing. So if I don't know, people don't use them as much anymore, but if you have a tachyon drive, if you have a hyperdrive, if you have like my transition drive, there's a bunch of other names out there. But it's the same basic principle. You're jumping from our space into another space where the rules are different. And it takes you, however long it takes you to go from one place to the other, and you come out basically wherever you want. It's not a fixed location. Maybe it's restricted. Like transition drive is restricted. You can't come out where there's no gravitational field because those are like roads, and if it's like interstates, and if there's no exit, well, you can't get out. But in a solar system, there'll be multiple exit points because there's multiple planets. There's masses that create possible exits from transition space. Anyhow, that will allow you to have Possibly. I mean, it's your rules, so you can make up whatever you want. But the fact that that you don't have to go as far once you get out of your hyperspace will allow, and you control how big a ship has to be to go into your hyperspace. That's just your rule. So, and that is all made up. The whole hyperspace thing, all this stuff. I have not seen any hypothetical physics that allow for hyperspace. So you're making this up anyway. So you can control how big the ships have to be and how much power it costs them. Just whatever fits in with your plot. So if you want ships small enough to, if you want a starship small enough to take off from a planet through the atmosphere, go to another world, land in their atmosphere, and those are the best kind of things to have for an adventure style science fiction, space opera, military science fiction, then some sort of hyperdrive is probably going to be best for you. And as I said before, it's not what you think is more realistic. That's not important. You want to make it sound realistic. You want to give it the air of realism, but you don't have to be realistic according to modern physics. It's almost impossible because we don't even know how these would work or if any of them would work. So just come up with something that fits your plot. Something that sounds cool and sounds real. You don't want something that sounds made up. It's going to be made up. You don't want it to sound made up. You don't want it to sound like something you just pulled out of your butt or you took out of a movie. Make it sound realistic. Give it the air, the trappings of verisimilitude, but don't worry about making it realistic. Just make it consistent. Make sure all your technology is consistent, but your faster than light drive is the most important thing to make consistent. And if you're jumping through wormholes to get to where you're going, well, then you need to remember the only way to get a message back home is going to be through those wormholes. And if you're having ships traveling with warp drive, then you have to remember that probably, unless you invent some other kind of communication, which will have its own problems if you do that, the fastest way to get a message from one star system to another is going to be put it on a ship and have that ship take the message. Hyperdrive, there are different stories that use things like subspace communication, and if you want to do that, that's fine. And if you got a hyperdrive, you might as well, because you're pretty much inventing your own physics anyway. But just remember that just because you have faster than light ships doesn't mean you have faster than light communications. So you have to keep that in mind when you're writing these stories, that the communications you use has to be in line with the faster than light travel. So the faster than light drive can really affect things like your communications, your defensive measures. If you can have a ship that can go into another universe, it's probably got some kind of a defensive shield around it that might work well in our universe to keep weapons off of it. So that's something to keep in mind. It reduces the number of impossible things you have to invent. Okay, I'm going to stop there for now. There's other things I'm going to get into when we do weapons, but can a ship that's going faster than light get into a gunfight? That's going to depend on the type of faster than light drive you use. So I'll do that next time. I'm going to end here. As always, if you want to find me, rickpartlow.com, facebook.com/dutyhonorplanet, or email me at dutyhonorplanet487@gmail.com.